Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started.
Rabbits actually should not eat carrots. They wear down their teeth and cause digestive problems. Although cartoons always show them eating them, their ideal diet is mainly based on hay, leafy greens, and small portions of fresh vegetables. Carrots contain a lot of natural sugar and should only be given as an occasional treat, since their digestive system is very sensitive. Princess syndrome is a term used in China and Korea to describe a psychological phenomenon that affects young women and is characterized by excessive narcissism, egocentrism, and a melodramatic personality, resulting in people who act like princesses. Many farmers in Botswana began painting eyes on the backsides of cows to prevent lions from continuing to eat them. The strategy works because lions prefer to attack by surprise and avoid prey that appear to be watching them. Field studies showed that painted cows were attacked far less frequently, turning this simple and inexpensive solution into an effective conservation measure. Unicorns are mentioned 9 times in the Bible. However, most of those references come from ancient translations into Greek and Latin that used the word unicorn to interpret a Hebrew term that probably described a wild animal with a single horn, such as the aurochs or some type of extinct ox, and not the mythological creature we imagine today. The man who invented waterbeds could not patent them because they had already been mentioned in science fiction novels. The modern design was developed in the 1960s by Charles Hall as a university project. Although he managed to popularize them commercially, prior references in literary works complicated some legal aspects related to the originality of the concept. 7% of Americans believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. This figure comes from a survey conducted by the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy some years ago. Although many experts pointed out that online surveys can include joking responses, the data went viral as an example of curious misinformation about basic foods. To prevent accidents in which cyclists or motorcyclists crash into an open car door as the driver is getting out, it is recommended to use the opposite hand to open the door, forcing you to turn your body and check if someone is coming before opening it. On average, a supernova explosion occurs every 50 years in the Milky Way, while in the observable universe, 30 happen every second. Although in our galaxy they are not always visible from Earth due to interstellar dust, astronomers estimate that frequency based on stellar remnants and models of stellar evolution. On a cosmic scale, the enormous number of galaxies makes these explosions relatively common events. Before being chosen by Netflix, the series Stranger Things was rejected by 15 television companies. The creators, the Duffer Brothers, pitched the project for months without success because many executives doubted a story led by children with a dark tone. Finally, Netflix took a chance on the idea, and it ended up becoming one of its biggest global hits. If you gather a group of 70 people, there is a 99.9% probability that 2 of them share the same birthday. There will come a point when helium will be so scarce that floating balloons will no longer exist. It is a non-renewable resource. Helium forms slowly through radioactive processes inside the Earth and becomes trapped in natural gas deposits. When it is released into the atmosphere, it is so light that it escapes into space, so its loss is practically irreversible on a human scale. Human hair is so difficult to break that its strength is compared to that of steel. The key is to gather many hairs together. That way, the strength accumulates. A single hair can support around 3.5 ounces before breaking, and a bundle of thousands could withstand several pounds of weight. This resistance is due to keratin, a fibrous protein that gives it structure and elasticity. In the Japanese version of Super Mario Kart, Peach and Bowser drink from a bottle of champagne during the celebrations when a race ends. Those animations were removed in the version released in other parts of the world. The sky beam, the beam of light that points into the sky coming from the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, the one shaped like a pyramid, attracts so many insects that a mini ecosystem has formed there with species of moths, bats, and even owls. Crayola means oily chalk. It comes from the French word clay, chalk, and ola, from oil. The name was created in the early 20th century by the wife of one of the company's founders, combining those roots to reflect the waxy texture of the product. Over time, Crayola became one of the most recognized crayon brands in the world. In 2008, in Austria, bras dating back to the medieval period were discovered. They were made more than 600 years ago. The light emitted by 200,000 galaxies makes our universe have a beige or cream color. Scientists call this the cosmic latte. There are blue bees. They are called Xylocopa cerulea, and they do not build honeycombs. They prefer to live inside tree trunks and inhabit Asia. The president of the soccer team, Real Madrid, did not want to sign Ronaldinho because, according to him, he was unattractive and did not help the company's brand image. Instead, they signed David Beckham because they believed he would be more profitable in Asia. Ronaldinho became a superstar at Barcelona and was once even given a standing ovation by Real Madrid fans. It was discovered that there is a rust-eating bacteria that is devouring the wreck of the Titanic, and it is believed that in just 20 years, there will be nothing left. Sounds like the perfect script for Titanic 2, The Return of Jack. Elmo from Sesame Street once testified before the United States Congress in 2022. Elmo knows where you live. The oldest known cat video was filmed in 1894, and you can find it on YouTube. The average computer user blinks only 7 times per minute. The normal rate is 20 times. That is why it is recommended to rest your eyes when you are on the computer. By reducing blinking, the surface of the eye dries out more easily, which can cause irritation and eye strain. A common recommendation is to apply the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at something about 20 yards away for 20 seconds. It is scientifically proven that being in love makes you a much less productive person. Some studies in psychology have observed that the early stages of falling in love can increase distraction, reduce concentration, and raise levels of intrusive thoughts about a partner. However, in the long term, stable and satisfying relationships are usually associated with greater emotional well-being, which can also support performance. It is estimated that out of every 12 million spam emails sent, only 1 receives a response. This data comes from studies on large-scale phishing campaigns, where attackers need enormous volumes to obtain minimal results. Although the success rate is extremely low, the near-zero cost of sending them makes even a few responses profitable. Radio took 38 years to reach an audience of 50 million users, while the iPod took only 3 years to reach that number. 75% of the food produced in the world comes from only 12 plants and 5 animal species. Among the plants are crops such as rice, wheat, and corn, which form the dietary base for much of the world's population. As for animals, cattle, pigs, and poultry account for most of the production, showing how dependent our diet is on a small number of species. In Norway, an unknown man has been relieving himself in golf course holes for more than 10 years. So now you know, maybe do not play golf in Norway. Before erasers existed, people used breadcrumbs to erase things written in pencil. Soft bread could absorb graphite without damaging the paper too much, making it a practical and inexpensive solution. It was not until the 18th century that natural rubber erasers began to become popular, proving to be much more durable and effective. The office cubicle as we know it was invented in 1968 by Robert Probst to provide social privacy to workers. The Hong Kong subway is the most efficient in the world. Trains arrive on time 99.9% of the time, and the entire system is managed using artificial intelligence. Folk singer Willie Nelson released an album in 1992 made specifically to pay the debt he had with the tax office. The album was called The IRS Tapes, Who Will Buy My Memories? The IRS is the United States Tax Office. In Bangkok, Thailand, a new trend emerged in which young people get tattoos and identify as Mexican gangsters. They also wear the clothing and hairstyles characteristic of that group. The Persians actually invented bagpipes, not the Scots. Wind instruments with an airbag have existed for thousands of years in regions of the Middle East, and there are ancient records in Persia and other nearby cultures. Over time, the instrument spread throughout Europe, and it was in Scotland where it adopted its most well-known form and became a national symbol. When alcohol was banned on United States Navy ships in 1914, they held one last party and invited ships from other countries to join. A few weeks later, many of the guests at the party would become rivals when World War I broke out. There is a symbol used to emphasize a sarcastic phrase or message. It looks like a spiral with a dot inside, and it is called the Sark mark. And I think we desperately need it. It is something that would do the internet a lot of good. I hope it comes back into fashion. Charles Darwin was the president of the Glutton Club at his university, where the goal was to find meat from rare animals to eat and discover new flavors. Later, when he went on his famous expeditions, he always tried to eat at least one of every animal he discovered. Owners of personalized license plates in Uganda had their taxes increased to almost triple. They will have to pay $5,992 instead of $1,498. The person who holds the Guinness World Record for filing the most lawsuits in his lifetime also tried to sue the Guinness World Records Company. The most cited case is that of Jonathan Lee Riches, an American inmate who filed thousands of lawsuits against celebrities, companies, and even historical figures. Although not all of them succeeded, his legal activity became so extreme that it ended up becoming part of his own fame. The woman who rented the garage to Larry Page and Sergey Brin, where they created Google in 1998, was Susan Wojcicki, or however you pronounce that, sorry Susan, who is currently the chief executive officer of YouTube. Unlike many mammals, bears can see all the colors that we can see. Their vision is similar to human vision in terms of color perception, which helps them identify ripe fruit, distinguish vegetation, and detect prey more accurately. This ability is especially useful during the day, when they rely more on sight than on smell. Many people who are allergic to latex are also allergic to bananas. This is due to a phenomenon known as cross-reactivity, since some proteins in natural latex are similar to those found in fruits such as bananas, avocados, or kiwi. The immune system can confuse them and react in a similar way to both. Chocolate can help prevent teeth from wearing down. Parts of the cocoa seed can attack the bacteria that break down teeth. Some studies have found that compounds present in cacao, such as certain polyphenols, can inhibit the growth of bacteria related to cavities. However, this mainly applies to pure cacao, since the added sugar in many commercial chocolates can have the opposite effect. Life has existed on planet Earth for more than 80% of its existence. It has been present practically since the moment it stopped being molten rock and cooled down. The earliest signs of life are very simple microorganisms that appeared billions of years ago in the primitive oceans. From those tiny and resilient forms, all the ecosystems we know today slowly evolved. Lightning has not brought down an airplane since 1963. This is because airplanes are now built in such a way that electricity does not collide with the aircraft. It simply travels along it and then continues on its way. When Stranger Things came out, the stock of the company Kellogg's reached its peak thanks to the scenes in which Eleven appears eating and stealing Eggos, that company's frozen waffles. Based on a study conducted on 6,000 people, it was discovered that 1 out of every 3 men does not wash his hands after going to the bathroom. Do not be part of that statistic, please. Harley Quinn did not originate in the comics. Her first appearance was in the animated Batman series, and she was so popular that she was added to the comic book universe shortly afterward. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson set a new Guinness World Record for the most selfies taken in 3 minutes. He took 105 selfies with his fans during the premiere of the movie Rampage. For the sequel to the movie Alien to be approved, James Cameron, the director, wrote the word alien on a board in front of executives and producers, but he added an S, so it said aliens, and then drew a line through the S to turn it into a dollar sign. That day, the movie was approved with a budget of $18 million. Elastic Girl's motorcycle in The Incredibles 2 is completely electric, so it does not harm the environment, in case you were wondering. At one point in production, it was considered that Elastic Girl would transform into the motorcycle with her powers, but I think it turned out better this way. JanSport backpacks are famous because they offer a lifetime warranty and can replace them years after you bought them if they have any defect. In 2010, a couple bought the town of Wakanda in Washington, United States, for only $360,000. It came with a cafe, a post office, a gas station, a 4-bedroom house, and even its own zip code. A bargain. Almost 85% of the planet's oxygen is produced in the oceans by phytoplankton, which are small autotrophic organisms that live dispersed in the water and probably spend their time planning how to steal secret burger formulas. Coffee does not actually dehydrate you. It can hydrate you almost as much as water. Although it contains caffeine, which has a mild diuretic effect, in people who consume it regularly, the body adapts and that effect is minimal. Since it is mostly made up of water, it contributes to daily fluid intake, as long as it is consumed in moderation. While filming Malcolm in the Middle, Bryan Cranston, who played Hal, invited Eric Sullivan, who played Dewey, to spend weekends with his family so he could experience a more normal childhood. This is what all the water on the planet would look like if you gathered it together into a floating sphere and placed it over the United States. Although it seems enormous, it would actually be a sphere a little more than 808 miles in diameter. It includes oceans, rivers, lakes, glaciers, and groundwater. The comparison shows how thin the layer of water is that makes life on Earth possible. The University of Paris existed for 820 years, from 1150 to 1970. It was closed because it was the main place where there were revolutionary students who almost overthrew the French government in 1968. Okunoshima, Japan, is known as Rabbit Island. There are thousands of rabbits that reproduced from 5 that were brought there in the 1960s. They have no natural predators and people feed them, so they live very well and are practically the owners of the place. Napoleon Bonaparte and Benjamin Franklin were at some point defeated by a chess-playing robot that traveled around the world, challenging and beating beginners and chess masters. In reality, that robot was just a man in disguise. What is funny is that now a real robot could easily beat that robot man. The backpack carried by the so-called Backpack Kid, who became famous doing the floss dance alongside Katy Perry and other artists, is not empty. In that backpack, he always carries a water bottle, spinners, a charger, and headphones. It is said that it helps him maintain stability while performing the difficult dance. It is believed that the deep web, the place you should never go, is 400 or even 500 times larger than the surface internet. Thanks to 3D printing, NASA can send new parts or equipment to the International Space Station by email in the form of files, instead of having to wait months for them to be sent. In South Korea, 68-hour work weeks have just been banned for being considered inhumane. Now the maximum they can make a person work is 52 hours. Koreans are among the people who work the most hours in the world. There is a space treaty that prohibits all nations from trying to claim ownership of the moon. No one can own the moon. It is the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, promoted within the framework of the United Nations. This agreement establishes that no country may appropriate the moon or other celestial bodies, and that space must be used for peaceful purposes and for the benefit of all humanity. According to a survey conducted among airline pilots, 56% of them admitted to having fallen asleep at some point while flying. The data comes from studies on fatigue in commercial aviation, where long shifts and time zone changes can affect rest. That is why there are strict protocols, cockpits with more than one pilot, and rules about maximum flight hours to reduce risks. If you were to observe how an object enters a black hole, no matter how closely you watch or for how long, you would never manage to see it due to time dilation. The logo of the New Zealand Air Force is a kiwi, a bird that does not fly. The Royal New Zealand Air Force adopted this bird as a national emblem, since the kiwi is a symbol of the country's identity. Although it may seem ironic for an Air Force, it represents pride and belonging in New Zealand. Chocolate chip cookies were invented in 1938. They were created by Ruth Wakefield at the Toll House Inn in Massachusetts when she added pieces of chocolate to the dough, expecting them to melt completely. Instead, they kept their shape, giving rise to one of the most popular recipes in modern baking. The Kitti's hog-nosed bat, or bumblebee bat, is the smallest mammal in the world. It lives in Myanmar and Thailand and, unfortunately, is an endangered species. The deepest artificial hole on the planet is 7.5 miles deep and is in Russia. The most we can dig or drill is only 21.5 miles, which is just the Earth's crust. Beyond that, it is impossible, because rock at high temperatures cannot be broken. So forget about the hole you were going to dig all the way to China. The first president of Zimbabwe, President Banana, Canaan Sodindo Banana, enacted a law that prohibited people from making fun of his name. Exercising regularly can delay brain aging by up to 10 years. Various studies have found that physical activity improves blood flow to the brain, stimulates the formation of new neural connections, and benefits memory. Active people tend to show greater volume in areas related to learning, which is associated with slower cognitive decline over time. A host of a children's show called Soapy Sanders once asked kids to send him the pieces of paper with presidents' faces that their parents had in their wallets or purses, meaning money. Even though it was a joke, he was suspended for 2 weeks. Newly hatched ducklings usually follow the first animal or the first thing they see that moves. They are programmed to follow their mother. But sometimes they end up following other things. In the Netherlands, the first completely plastic-free supermarket section was recently opened, hoping that more and more stores will join that initiative. In 2012, Cookie Monster mentioned in an episode of Sesame Street that the rumor that his name was going to be changed to Veggie Monster and that he was going to stop eating cookies had to end, because if people did not stop spreading the rumor, it would ruin his reputation. Almonds and peaches belong to the same family of plants. Both are part of the genus Prunus, which also includes plums, cherries, and apricots. In fact, the almond is not a true nut, but the seed of the fruit, very similar to the pit of a peach, which explains their botanical similarity and close relationship. A study from Harvard University stated that not having friends harms your health in the same way that being a smoker would. Research on social isolation has found that chronic loneliness is associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, depression, and premature mortality. Some analyses compare its impact to factors such as smoking several cigarettes a day, highlighting the importance of maintaining strong social bonds. Of every 4 species that exist in the world, 1 is a beetle. There are many different beetles. This group of insects, known scientifically as Coleoptera, is the most diverse on the planet, with hundreds of thousands of described species and many more yet to be discovered. They have adapted to almost every ecosystem, from tropical rainforests to deserts, playing key roles as decomposers, pollinators, and pest controllers. The last movie rented at a Blockbuster before it officially closed its doors in 2013 was ironically called This Is the End. Snail teeth are the strongest natural material that exists. They can withstand pressures high enough to turn coal into diamonds. That is right, snails have many tiny teeth. The number of stars on the European Union flag does not represent anything. There are 12 stars, and they were chosen as a number without political association and as a symbol of unity. The most powerful roller coaster in the world is located in Johannesburg, South Africa. It is called the Tower of Terror, and riders can experience accelerations of up to 6.3 G, which may not be enough to untie your shoes, but I would not get on it even if they gave me $10,000. The Minions only have 3 fingers, in case you had not noticed. These animated characters from the Despicable Me franchise were designed with simple shapes and exaggerated features to make them more expressive and easier to animate. Their 3 fingers help maintain that cartoonish and distinctive style that made them so recognizable in film. Fish also cough. Although they do not do it like humans, they make abrupt movements of their gills and mouths to expel particles, parasites, or debris that obstruct their respiratory system. This reflex helps keep their gills clean, which are essential for extracting oxygen from the water and surviving. Tupac Shakur was the first artist to have an album reach #1 on the Billboard charts while still in prison. It was his 3rd album, Me Against the World. In countries where alcohol is prohibited, which still exists in some parts of the world, there are 3.5 times more car accidents caused by drivers under the influence. The scientific name of the western lowland gorilla is Gorilla gorilla gorilla. In biological classification, the genus is gorilla, the species is Gorilla gorilla, and the western lowland subspecies repeats the name, following the rules of zoological nomenclature. This type of repetition is known as a trinomial name and is not very common, which makes it especially curious. Approximately 4% of all the cheese made in a year ends up being stolen. I suppose it is when people take pieces in the supermarket, or who knows why. NASA wanted to send Big Bird from Sesame Street into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger so that children would become interested in space, but the costume was too large and took up too much space. So instead, they sent teacher Krista McAuliffe. As we know, the Challenger exploded minutes after takeoff. Accidents while trying to cut avocados have increased considerably this year compared to previous years due to the popularity of that fruit. People do not know how to cut them properly. The directors of the movie Avengers: Infinity War, the Russo brothers, paid tribute to their series Arrested Development. In that series, there is a character named Tobias Funke, who paints himself blue because he auditions to be an understudy in the Blue Man Group. In Infinity War, Tobias appears as one of the collector's items and can be seen briefly behind Gamora in a scene. The recipe for French bread has existed and been prepared since before France existed. Crusty bread with an airy crumb has roots in ancient fermentation techniques developed by Romans and other European peoples. Over time, in French territory, kneading and baking methods were refined, giving rise to the modern baguette that is now associated with that country. It has been proven that the more features a person's phone has, the more time they will spend in the bathroom, according to a study that was conducted. CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays are read from the inside out, which is the opposite of how vinyl records are read. Footprints found in a cave in France, belonging to a child and alongside them those of a dog or a wolf, suggest that due to their age, the relationship between dogs and humans began much earlier, even before the last ice age. The company Foxconn that manufactures the iPhone has managed to reduce its employees from 100,000 to only 50,000, thanks to the robots it has introduced. Lactose-free milk can last up to 5 weeks longer without spoiling than whole milk, the regular kind. But that is before being opened, because once you open them, both will spoil in 3 or 4 days. In 1989, billionaire Richard Branson launched a hot air balloon shaped like an extraterrestrial spacecraft and hired a person to dress up as ET and come out to scare whoever was nearby when it landed. Coins that have some manufacturing defect are usually worth much more than their face value. If it is a significant defect, they can be worth much more to collectors. People who speak 2 languages usually make better decisions and think more rationally in their second language. Various studies in psychology have observed that when using a learned language, the emotional load of certain words is reduced, which can decrease impulsive biases and encourage a more detached analysis. This effect does not mean being more intelligent, but rather processing information with greater emotional distance. Nachos are called nachos because they were invented by a man named Nacho Anaya in Piedras Negras, Mexico. The dish was called Nachos Special, but later it was shortened to just nachos. Legend says he made them with the ingredients he found at that moment in his kitchen for the wives of some soldiers in that city. Canned party streamers that people use when celebrating something are used by the military around the world to reveal invisible tripwires used to detonate explosives. The streamers catch on the wires, but they are not heavy enough to trigger them. The first glimpse of the far side of the moon was achieved in 1959, thanks to an image captured by the Soviet probe Luna 3. It was the first time humanity was able to observe the hidden face of the satellite, since the moon always shows the same side to Earth due to its synchronized rotation. The images were low resolution, but they marked a milestone in space exploration. Redheads produce more vitamin D than people with other hair colors. That means they do not have to sunbathe as much to have more of that vitamin. The abbreviation OMG, which stands for Oh My God or God, was first used in a letter that a woman sent to Winston Churchill in 1917. It was discovered after research at the University of Oxford. It was previously believed that it had first been used on an internet forum in 1994. Bananas are slightly curved because they grow trying to point toward the sun. This phenomenon is called negative geotropism, or phototropism, and it occurs when the fruit, which initially hangs downward, begins to curve upward, seeking light as it develops. As it ripens, that response to the light stimulus gives it its characteristic shape. Originally, the humans in the movie Wall-E were going to be shapeless masses, and only at the very end of the movie would it be revealed that they were actually humans, after the effects of zero gravity and the passage of years. But they decided to stick with the robust shape we came to know. Once, Nikola Tesla became addicted to gambling and games of chance, which caused him to lose all the money for his studies. He had to drop out of school. The written history of the Mayan civilization, the Mayan codices, were almost entirely destroyed during the 16th century. That is why we now know almost nothing about that civilization. People with blue or light-colored eyes can develop a greater dependence on alcohol than people with brown eyes. This has already been confirmed, but researchers still have no idea why it happens. Vikings never actually wore horned helmets, as they are commonly portrayed in illustrations. Their helmets were very normal. The image of horns became popular in the 19th century thanks to theatrical productions and operas that sought to make them more striking. Archaeological findings show practical helmets made of iron or leather, designed for protection and not to get in the way in combat. Even though there is still no substance capable of making a person tell the truth, there are some countries, such as Russia and Canada, that use truth serums for interrogations. Who knows what they are made of? The soda Fanta began as a substitute for Coca-Cola when Germany could not import it from the United States. During World War II, the German branch of Coca-Cola was isolated by trade restrictions, so it developed a new drink with locally available ingredients. That is how Fanta was born, whose name comes from the word fantasy, referring to the creativity needed to improvise the formula. Humpty Dumpty was not actually an egg. In the traditional rhyme where he first appeared, that is never mentioned, but people collectively accepted it because it was better for an egg to fall from the top of a wall than for a person to fall. In the Museum of the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States, there is a pipe designed to receive radio signals, carrying the vibrations from the jaw to the ears. In many countries, the Navy is once again teaching celestial navigation, meaning navigating by the stars, to know where they are sailing. They're doing this in order to respond to potential cyber attacks on navigation systems, proof that, little by little, we are going back to the Middle Ages. The popular K-pop group BTS was created by the entertainment company Big Hit. Auditions to find the members began in 2010, but it was not until 2013 that the final lineup was defined. Grunting in a tennis match is punished with a point against the player. This is because the grunting of some players, such as that of Maria Sharapova, is equivalent in noise to the roar of a lion, and this can affect the opponent. People who have dark eyes actually have light eyes underneath a layer of melanin that gives them the dark color. The color depends on the amount and distribution of melanin in the iris, not on additional blue or green pigments. When there is little melanin, light scatters and produces lighter shades. With a higher concentration, the iris appears brown or dark. The Sanskrit word used for war literally means desiring more cows than the ones you already have. In ancient India, cattle were a symbol of wealth, power, and sustenance, so many conflicts arose from disputes related to herds. In fact, in Vedic texts, prosperity is associated with the number of cows owned, reflecting a deeply livestock-based economy. Actor Vincent D'Onofrio holds the record for the most weight gained to portray a role. He gained 70 pounds to play Private Pyle in the movie Full Metal Jacket. If one day you decided to walk from North Korea to Norway, just casually, you would only cross one country on your way, Russia, and it would be about 4,660 miles of travel. In 1931, a scientist tried to teach a baby chimpanzee to act like a human by raising it alongside his son. The chimpanzee never learned to use human vocabulary, and the experiment ended when the baby began imitating the primate's sounds. Jason Brown, one of the highest-paid NFL players in 2009, quit after earning $25 million to become a farmer and donate his food. Kobe Bryant's grandmother only went to see him play once in his entire career. That day, he scored 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. In 2017, nearly 25,000 Kinder eggs were confiscated at United States Customs. Those chocolates with toys inside are banned in the country. Nikola Tesla went to the park daily to feed the pigeons. He later realized that one of the pigeons that came with him every day had an injured leg and wing, so he spent more than $2,000 to build a device to help heal it. Tesla truly loved pigeons. The black mesh on microwave oven doors is not just there for decoration. It is there to block the microwaves that heat the food, which are actually so large that they cannot pass through those holes. Cheetahs do not roar. They only meow and make sounds similar to those of a cat. Unlike lions and tigers, their larynx structure is different and does not allow them to roar. Instead, they emit chirps, purrs, and soft growls to communicate. This characteristic makes them closer to small felines than to the large predators they are often confused with. There are at least 18 muscles in dogs' ears, which is why they can move them so easily. This mobility improves their hearing ability and helps them detect the direction and distance of distant sounds. China produces 68% of all the watermelons in the world. That is 20 times more than the second largest producer of this fruit. Thanks to its enormous agricultural territory and high domestic demand, the country overwhelmingly dominates the global market. Provinces with warm climates and intensive irrigation systems allow massive harvests each year, consolidating its leadership in global production. Di Tong, the first man to successfully clone a fish, was forced to leave his research and become a janitor by the Chinese government during the country's Cultural Revolution. Pirates did not actually look for gold, silver, and jewels. What they stole most were commercial goods such as furs, spices, sugar, dyes, tobacco, and that kind of boring stuff. In general, people tend to read 10% slower on a screen than on paper. Various studies on digital reading have found that lighting, contrast, and continuous scrolling of text can affect speed and comprehension. In the 70s, the United States government tried to create an artificial coral reef using pieces of concrete and used tires. The reef ended up being a major ecological disaster because the tires eroded and were thrown by hurricanes onto natural reefs. Margaret Thatcher was more proud of being the first Prime Minister of the United Kingdom with a university degree in science than of being the first female Prime Minister of that country. Manufacturing and distributing phone books consumes more than 600,000 tons of paper per year, even though almost no one uses them anymore. Every time an armadillo has babies, they are born as identical quadruplets. In fact, this occurs specifically with the nine-banded armadillo, whose reproduction includes a process called polyembryony, where a single fertilized egg divides into four genetically identical embryos. As a result, the offspring are the same sex and share exactly the same genetic information. Global warming helped solve a problem that Bangladesh and India had. They were fighting over an island, but the island disappeared because of rising sea levels. See, global warming is not as bad as we thought, I guess. Of every 5 species that exist in the world, 1 is a bat. That means that out of 5,488 species, 1,240 are bats. Basically, we are surrounded by beetles and bats. In Germany and in Austria, it is not a crime to attempt to escape from prison, since it is considered a human instinct to want to be free. The same applies in Mexico. Seriously. Bears have a better sense of smell than dogs. In fact, some species can detect scents from several miles away and locate food buried under soil or snow. Their brain devotes an enormous proportion to processing smells, making them some of the terrestrial mammals with the greatest olfactory ability on the planet. Yogi Bear and other Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters wore collars. They did it on purpose so the animators could work less. That way, they only had to draw the head in each frame when the characters were speaking. When they returned to Earth, the members of Apollo 11 had to go through United States Customs because they were bringing objects from somewhere else. They had to declare the moon rocks they had collected. The creators of the movie Despicable Me admitted that they only created the minions to make people like Gru, the supervillain protagonist of the film, more. A tablespoon of matter taken from a neutron star would weigh the same as an entire mountain on planet Earth. These stars form when a massive star collapses after a supernova, compressing its core until protons and electrons merge into neutrons. The resulting density is so extreme that a small portion could weigh billions of tons under Earth conditions. The most searched tutorial on YouTube is how to kiss. For years, searches related to kissing, relationships, and romantic advice have been among the most popular on the platform, especially among younger users. Although trends constantly change, topics linked to personal curiosity and human relationships tend to rank very high in global search rankings. Dogs always relieve themselves oriented specifically according to the magnetic field of planet Earth. In 2011, a woman bought an invisible piece of art for $10,000. It seems like this postmodern art thing is getting out of control. The giant tortoise of the Galapagos Islands did not receive a scientific name for 300 years because it could not be properly classified in Europe since the clever sailors on ships would eat them. Apparently, they tasted very good, and even Charles Darwin tried them at some point. There are more than 10,000 underground nuclear shelters in Beijing, China, that were built during the Cold War. They were later sold as real estate, and currently more than 1 million people live in them. When your sneakers come untied on their own without doing anything more than walking, it happens because the laces experience accelerations of up to 7G with each step you take. A rock with a fake cave painting of a man pushing a shopping cart was hung on a wall of the British Museum by street artist Banksy in 2005. Days passed before anyone realized that the piece did not belong there. The domain www.youtube.com was registered on February 14, 2005. The registration took place shortly before the site began operating publicly and marked the beginning of a platform that would transform the way video is consumed and shared on the internet. Months later, the first video would be uploaded, ushering in a new digital era. The fastest that sound can travel under normal conditions is through diamond at 26,835 miles per hour, while in normal air, it travels at 767 miles per hour. Video game designer Will Wright was inspired to create the popular game The Sims after he lost his house in a fire. He wanted to create a game that would emulate the experience of having to build his life from scratch again. In Los Angeles, United States, there are oil wells in the middle of the city, but they are not noticeable because they are disguised as sculptures or fake office buildings. Most of the bread sold in the United States as whole wheat bread is actually just white bread dyed brown. 90% of all the scientists who have ever existed are alive today. That means that before there were very few scientists. Humans are the only species that can throw objects with good accuracy. Even though the movie Scott Pilgrim is considered a cult film because of its large number of fans, it did not manage to recover its $85 million budget. It lost $10 million even after counting revenue from DVD and Blu-ray sales. A study that was conducted discovered that plants can react to the sound of flowing water, growing and directing themselves toward where it is heard. Controlled experiments showed that certain roots tend to orient themselves toward specific vibrations associated with moving water, even without direct contact with visible moisture. Although they do not hear like animals, they do perceive environmental vibrations that influence their development. Full-body scanners at airports get confused when you wear very shiny clothing with sequins and reflective items. If you wear that type of clothing, you will most likely be checked manually. The battery of the famous Nokia 3310 lasted so long that you could make a 55-hour call without it shutting off. In reality, the long battery life was not because it had a super battery, but because the phone consumed almost no energy. In Japan, it was illegal to dance in nightclubs after midnight, unless the establishments had a special permit. The ban lasted 67 years, until it finally ended in 2015. A robot called Bento was deemed too dangerous when it competed on the show Robot Wars, because when it won, pieces of its opponents would go flying and hit the walls of the arena. They had to disqualify it, and as consolation, they gave it the title of co-champion. Milunka Savic enlisted in the Serbian army by pretending to be a man. She fought in World War I and was wounded on at least 9 occasions. However, she captured a total of 23 Bulgarian soldiers all by herself. If you press the letter S while watching Netflix, you can skip the introduction of series without having to click with the mouse where it says Skip Intro. Very useful for wild Netflix marathons. In New Delhi, India, if a tree gets sick from pests or falls down, an ambulance arrives to treat it. This has been done since 2009, and it takes 4 people to do the job. Just 1 year after humans arrived on the moon in 1969, people lost interest in space exploration, to the point that almost 90% of those surveyed did not remember the name of Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. Although it only reached worldwide fame in recent months, the game Fortnite was first announced in 2011. But due to delays and testing time, it was not released until mid-2017. And even though it is now free, many people bought it in pre-order since it was announced as a paid game. Emily Blunt suffered from chronic stuttering during her adolescence. Now that she has overcome it, she became a member of the American Institute for Stuttering. In the state of Texas, in the United States, it is illegal to kill Bigfoot if someone ever finds him. Pit bull dogs are among the most affectionate and least aggressive breeds that exist. They are only aggressive when trained for dogfighting or for security. According to a study that was conducted, dogs truly like the high-pitched and playful tone of voice that people use when talking to them. Between 1900 and 1920, tug of war was an Olympic event that awarded medals. It was part of the official program in several editions of the modern Olympic Games and was considered an athletics discipline. Teams of 8 competitors pulled on a rope, trying to drag the rival a certain distance, and some countries even won several medals in this unusual event. On Christmas in 1927 in the United States, they left all the runway lights in the country on so that Santa Claus could travel more easily and not crash. William Shakespeare, in addition to inventing words and even names, also popularized the phrase, "break the ice." The cartoon The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy won 2 Emmy Awards in 2006 and 2007, respectively. Writer Joe Hill was so determined that no one would know he is Stephen King's son that his own agent did not find out until after 10 years of working with him. The inventor of the waffle iron did not like waffles. In Kenya, it is popular to run naked at night. There is a baby in Colombia named Netflix de Jesus Rodriguez Restrepo, and I think we already know what his parents were doing when he was conceived. Mexico was at war with France in 1838 because they refused to pay 600,000 pesos to a French chef after some police officers looted his pastry shop. The conflict is now known as the Pastry War. The Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, the CIA, reads more than 5 million tweets per day. Roller coaster loops are shaped like an upside-down teardrop. If they were completely circular, they would subject people to more than 6 drams of force, which would cause serious injuries. According to a law in China, all children over 11 years old must plant at least one tree each year. This was enacted because of the country's severe deforestation. In Panama City, there was an armed conflict in 1856 because of a drunken American who did not want to pay 5 cents for a slice of watermelon. The conflict ended with 15 American casualties and 2 Panamanian ones, and it is now known as the Watermelon War. Once a guide dog named Roselle helped her blind owner go down 78 flights of stairs. It took them an hour to descend, but they made it out safely and nothing happened to them. Acetaminophen is extremely toxic to cats because they do not have the proper enzyme to break it down. They can suffocate even if they consume a very small amount. In Japan, Ronald McDonald is called Donald McDonald because in Japanese, there is no letter R sound. Microsoft tried to monopolize the web browser market when they were just getting started. It was difficult to install other browsers, and Windows generally became slower if you uninstalled Internet Explorer. I think they should have focused on making a better browser. Bats can eat up to 1,200 mosquitoes in an hour, and there are species that eat their entire body weight in insects every night. In the comics, Deadpool has taken down more than one enemy with his ability to talk non-stop. He has driven them crazy with it. In Stalingrad, during World War II, the life expectancy of a Soviet soldier was only 24 hours. 10% of ancient tools that have been found are designed to be used by left-handed people. That means the proportion of left-handed people has remained the same over the last 10,000 years. If your car's turn signal light starts blinking faster than normal, it may be that the bulb needs to be replaced soon or that one of the bulbs is no longer working. This does not apply to newer cars since they use LED lights. A type of Tamagotchi was almost banned because it had a mini-game similar to casino slot machines. It was said that it could turn children into future gambling addicts. It was discovered that some pandas pretend to be pregnant in order to receive more food and special treatment from humans while in captivity. The stickers that are attached to some fruits must by law be edible, but if you are going to eat them, it is recommended to wash them first. And if you are washing them, you might as well remove them. The name of the actor Shia LaBeouf literally means "thank God for the beef." In the year 2000, Michael Jackson entered the Guinness World Records for being the star who has made the most charitable donations. He gave more than $300 million to charity. During the 1850s, the city of Chicago was raised approximately 1 foot due to flooding and muddy terrain. Dirt was added to the streets to raise them, and even entire buildings were lifted to elevate them. The Russians abandoned and set fire to the city of Moscow when they learned that Napoleon was heading straight to conquer it, which caused him to retreat because his army had no food. In ancient Greece, to declare your love to someone, you had to throw an apple at them. The apple was associated with Aphrodite and the symbolism of desire, so throwing it could be interpreted as a romantic proposal. If the other person caught it, it was understood as an acceptance of the feeling, turning the gesture into a symbolic form of courtship. If you are one of those who feels cheated because potato chip bags contain more air than chips, that air is actually nitrogen, and it helps keep the chips from oxidizing as quickly. In addition, the bag is inflated so they do not get crushed. It is possible to use Cheetos as a match or as a torch due to their high oil content, and not because they are made of plastic. Since they are made from cornmeal and vegetable oils, they can burn for a few seconds if lit. That combustion is due to the concentrated fat, which acts as fuel, not to synthetic materials in their composition. In the city of Dorset in Minnesota, United States, a 3-year-old child was elected mayor. Approximately 20% of technology company founders are immigrants, even though immigrants make up only 4% of the total population. If you search for the word askew on Google, which means crooked, the entire page will tilt slightly. It is possible to ask Google to pixelate or blur your house on Google Earth or Street View. A farmer in England could not bring himself to kill the cows he had when it was necessary to do so, so he converted his farm to 100% vegan. Polar bear fur is not actually white. It is transparent, and the hairs are hollow to help protect them from the cold. In addition, their skin is dark, but in hot and humid climates, it can happen that their fur turns green due to mold and algae that can grow inside the hairs. At Harvard University, there is a place where they store pigment samples, including some very rare ones that contain pieces of now extinct insects, poisonous metals, and even parts of mummies. Dogs can be allergic to humans, specifically to human dander. If your dog has allergies and undergoes treatment, it should be kept away from people with poor hygiene for almost 12 months. Although Batman's fame began when his first comic was released in 1940, his first appearance was in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939. We are at a moment in history in which the video game industry generates more money than the film and music industries combined. Nintendo sold more Switch consoles in its first year of existence than all the Wii U consoles that were sold during its entire 4-year life cycle, more or less. Alfred Hitchcock appeared in 39 of the 52 films he directed. His cameos became so famous that they started placing them earlier in the movies so people would not lose interest in the story. The original Deadpool suit for the first movie had an extra layer of fake muscles that had to be removed, and this was because Ryan Reynolds was too muscular and it looked strange. It was also too tight. Ryan Reynolds problems. This is a photo of the last thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, in captivity, and the last of its species. It was taken at a zoo in Tasmania in 1933. There is a robot factory in Japan that is so automated that it can operate without supervision for periods of 30 days. The robots build up to 50 robots each day, and who knows what they are planning while no one is supervising them. Agriculture was invented or discovered before blue eyes were invented or appeared. The first Homo sapiens with blue eyes had the mutation about 7,700 years ago, while agriculture has been practiced for 11,500 years. Skipping breakfast does not actually contribute to weight gain, health problems, or lower sports performance. But it is still not recommended because when else during the day can you eat cereal out of a cup? Just saying. A man won a Nobel Prize in 1999 for inventing a flamethrower device for automobiles to prevent theft. Japanese people wear face masks not only to avoid catching or spreading illnesses, they also do it for fashion and to avoid conversations with other people. The number of combinations in which you can scramble a Rubik's Cube is almost equivalent to the number of atoms estimated to exist in the observable universe. It is scientifically proven that sandwiches prepared by someone else taste better. This is because watching it being prepared reduces interest. That is why cereal in a cup is better. 3 dogs were saved during the sinking of the Titanic. Their owners were traveling with them in first-class cabins. In the 80s, people could download video games through a radio transmission, recording the sounds onto a cassette that they could later play on their computers. There is a butterfly called 8998. It is called that because the markings on its wings are very similar to those numbers. It is native to Colombia. The Lego factory in Denmark is so automated that when you buy a Lego set, you are the first human to see and touch those plastic bricks. In the 1830s, ketchup was sold as medicine. Those who sold it claimed it was a cure for indigestion. Some classic castles in Japan have floors that were designed to make noise when someone stepped on them, to prevent anyone from sneaking in undetected. Not even a ninja could pass through there. Only 4 telephone booths remain in Manhattan, New York, and all of them are free. Microsoft gave a computer and tools to a man in Ghana who taught computer science on a chalkboard. It is possible to navigate YouTube in 75 languages. That covers 95% of the world's population. Cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev went into space as a citizen of the Soviet Union and returned as a Russian citizen. This happened because he was still in orbit when the Soviet Union dissolved on December 26, 1991. It has been shown that people who play video games have a greater ability to refocus on what they were doing after a distraction than people who do not play. 75% of a banana is water. That is not much compared to a radish, which is 95% H2O. To find out in case they are copied, dictionary writers include fake words, and no one does anything about it. Maybe they invented many words that are used today. Bill Gates' mansion was designed on an Apple computer. When hippos get angry, their sweat turns red. Once the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States took a Soviet space shuttle during the night. They dismantled it, studied its features, put it back together, and returned it without the Soviets noticing. To calculate the position of the space probe Voyager 1 at more than 12 billion miles away, you only need to use the first 15 digits of pi to get an accuracy of 1.5 inches. Easy. Glow sticks are based on the work of the scientist Edwin Chandros, who did not find out until 2013 that his invention was widely used at parties. Crows can recognize human faces and can communicate with other crows if they believe a human may be dangerous. They have also been seen using improvised tools to obtain food. Humans from a long time ago took advantage of our endurance for running long distances without getting tired to catch their prey. No animal can beat us at that. The classics by Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are part of a story of 8 books. The other stories were lost forever over the years. Donnie Yen, the actor who appears as a monk in Star Wars Rogue One, was once leaving a nightclub in Hong Kong with his girlfriend when he was attacked by a gang that had been harassing him earlier. 8 members of the gang had to be hospitalized after the altercation, and Donnie did not have a single scratch. Most of Disney's lead animators preferred to work on Pocahontas rather than The Lion King, because the studio had low expectations for the movie. It was the first film for almost all of the animators who worked on it. There is a museum of bad art. It is located in Somerville, Massachusetts, United States, and as its name suggests, inside there is a collection of art that is considered very bad. Tom Kenny, the official voice of SpongeBob, appeared in the video Tonight Tonight by Smashing Pumpkins, along with his wife, 2 years before he began voicing the famous character. In Italy, a new courthouse was built solely to prosecute the mafia. 472 members were sentenced in a trial that lasted from 1986 to 1992. It is the record for the largest trial of all time. The company and the domain Netflix.com have existed since before Google. Netflix was founded in 1997 and Google about a year later. When musician Sun Ra once performed a show in a psychiatric hospital, he encouraged a patient to speak for the first time in many years. The patient walked toward his piano and exclaimed, "You call this music?" Once, Nigerian scammers sold a fake airport to an international bank for $242 million. It was not until 3 years later that it was discovered that everything was fake. The easternmost point within the territory of Brazil is closer to Africa than the westernmost point in the same Brazil. Suzanne Collins, the author of the Hunger Games books, also wrote Clarissa Explains It All. On the island of Capri in Italy, it is illegal to wear footwear that makes a lot of noise when walking, especially sandals. The rule seeks to preserve the tranquility of the island and avoid disturbances to residents and tourists in its narrow streets. Cleopatra had a special red lipstick made for her from a mixture of ground ants and cochineal insects that produced the perfect shade of red. To make the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas, the stop-motion technique was used, which is moving the models frame by frame. To make 1 minute, they took a week. The entire movie took almost 3 years to film. The names Olivia, Miranda, and Jessica were invented by William Shakespeare. They appeared for the first time in his works. Like if your name is one of those. Facebook is blue mainly because the creator of the social network, Mark Zuckerberg, cannot see the colors red and green. Capybaras are the largest rodents in the world. They are the size of a large dog and can weigh up to 110 pounds. They live in wet areas of South America and are excellent swimmers thanks to their partially webbed feet. In addition, they are very social animals that tend to form large groups and communicate through whistles and soft grunts. When watermelons are cooked or roasted, their texture changes and they take on a consistency and appearance similar to meat. They can even be used as a meat substitute, except the watermelon flavor does not go away. Mexico sent 300,000 workers to farms and factories in the United States to help while the army was fighting alongside the Allies in World War II. Chewing gum has the same effectiveness in waking up the mind and is considered better for studying than caffeine, but no one knows why. Scotland was one of the few countries that could not be conquered by the Roman Empire during the 1st century. The largest jellyfish ever discovered measured 23 miles, longer than a blue whale, the largest animal in the world. Cheetos are designed to melt in your mouth, making your brain think that you are not consuming calories. That is why you never get tired of eating them. Until 2008, Walmart de Mexico was still paying its employees with vouchers redeemable only in Walmart stores. If you trigger an explosion inside a bubble underwater using a sound wave, it can emit flashes of light, and that phenomenon has still not been explained. In the mid-1960s, the sleepover Barbie doll came with a book called How to Lose Weight. One of the tips included in that little book was, do not eat. A very bad piece of advice for people who are not made of plastic. The first photo ever uploaded to Instagram was taken by the company's co-founder, Kevin Systrom, on July 16, 2010. The photo shows a dog. It was taken in Mexico near a taco stand. This bird, called the kakapo, is one of the most endangered species because it cannot fly and also gives off a distinctive, musky, relatively pleasant smell, which makes it the perfect victim for predators. It is expected that, thanks to joint efforts, the ozone layer will fully recover in 2075. Let us hope the planet still exists. When frogs are eating, they blink a lot. When they blink, their eyes sink in and help push the food toward their stomach, and that is why they blink so much. Retired basketball player and actor Shaquille O'Neal owns 150 car washes.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.